Self-care alone is not how to recover from chronic stress and burnout. If you're wondering why that is and want to know what to do about it, be sure to listen.
Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things and build resilience so you can feel better in your body, enjoy your life again, and maybe even love nursing again. Welcome to the Resilient Nurse Podcast.
Only practicing self-care is not how to recover from chronic stress and burnout so you can feel better. In fact, only practicing self-care in the face of chronic stress and burnout will leave you feeling more exhausted and likely eventually more burned out. I understand why you might think that self-care alone is the way to go. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of gurus and psychotherapists like me telling everyone to do more self care. And it's true. Self care is an essential part of living a life of health and wellness and living fully because it helps us take care of our body and also helps us cope with the day to day stress that we face from being human. The problem is when we're facing chronic stress, there's usually a much bigger underlying issue that's causing or at least majorly contributing to the stress that you face. And if you never address this underlying stressor, your self care may help you feel better while you're doing it or even for a little while. But eventually, you're going to have to do more and more just to feel some basic level of sanity. And it might make you feel more exhausted, like you're just trying to keep up with the stress that you face. It's like if you've got a hole in your boat, trying to plug the hole with your thumb, right? You can do it and it will keep the boat from sinking at least for a while, depending on how big the hole is. But it's certainly not sustainable because the problem is you haven't addressed the big issue, which is the hole in the boat. That's kind of like using only self-care when you're facing chronic stress. So there's this underlying stressor that needs to be addressed. And if you're only doing self care, you might start getting burned out by only doing self care and not seeing it work. So you might stop and end up feeling worse. And you might even feel shame that nothing you do actually helps you feel better. So the question is what do resilient people do? Resilient people do their self care too. They exercise, they eat well, they get plenty of sleep. I mean, most of the time, right? No one's perfect. And they also do fun things, connect with loved ones, and do activities that promote emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness. And they address the underlying issue causing their stress. They consider the underlying stressor they face and they figure out a way to address it. So there's several ways to address underlying stressors. Some that for stressors that are within our control and some for stressors that are outside of our control. I'm about to share one way resilient people address stressors that are within their control, even though there's three that I teach in my programs. So one way that resilient people address underlying stressors that are within their control is by communicating their wants, needs, and boundaries clearly and kindly. This isn't exactly profound, yet it's something most people don't do because it's hard and uncomfortable. Most people tend to complain to their coworkers and loved ones about dysfunctional, even toxic workplaces and systems in which they work, which is valid, but they do it as though venting alone will help. But the problem is while venting might feel good in the moment, it doesn't solve the problem and can actually leave the venter to feel more stuck over time. The good news is it doesn't have to be that way. For stressors within your control, you can learn to communicate clear and compassionate boundaries regarding what is okay for you and what is not okay for you, what you will and won't do, as well as communicate your wants and needs effectively. There are ways to do this that honor all sides of the relationship, including yours, right? You want to honor yourself within this so that you can shift the situation into more of a negotiation, a conversation about what might be effective, which is especially relevant at work where negotiation is often common. So, I'm not going to tell you today how to set boundaries because before you can set boundaries, there's some things you need to do. So, to do this, you need to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations. It's just part of the deal. Whenever we set boundaries and communicate what we are willing to do and what we're not willing to do, sometimes things get uncomfortable, people get upset. And so we have to be willing and able to have those uncomfortable conversations. You have to be willing to communicate clearly, compassionately, and effectively about what is okay for you and what is not okay for you. You have to be willing to listen to the other person and not just listen to respond, but truly listen to understand where they're coming from so that you're putting the problem in front of you two or whoever else is involved rather than between you. You need to learn how to be accepting of nuance and uncertainty because rarely do these big problems have simple answers. You need to be able to tolerate discomfort. And a big piece of this, which I'm probably going to talk about in a future podcast because it's coming up a lot lately in my practice, is that you need to teach your nervous system the difference between discomfort and a lack of safety because not all uncomfortable things are unsafe. I think over the last several years, a lot of us have avoided discomfort because things got really intense when we would say, "Oh, it's not safe, it's not safe." And sometimes it's like, you know what? Was it not safe or is it just super duper uncomfortable? And so we have to be open to consider that and really look at ourselves and see what's going on and unpack some of that stuff. We also have to be willing to accept non binary or more complex solutions. Rarely is it going to be your way or their way. There's usually some more complex solution involved. This work isn't easy. In fact, it's hard work and takes a lot of courage. It's work that you have to be willing to commit to if you want things to change. To me, it's a matter of what kind of discomfort you want to deal with. Do you want to deal with the discomfort of staying the same and things being how they always have been? Or do you want to deal with the discomfort of uncomfortable conversations and solutions that aren't perfect, but at least they're progress, right? The choice is really yours. And so, if you're feeling ready for some of this deeper work, feeling ready to learn how to set some of those boundaries and develop that courage, stay tuned for an opportunity that I have coming up so that we can do more of this work together. Take care. Hey, it's Jen. If you're a woman in a high pressure job like teaching, nursing, social work, you're a psychotherapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a respiratory therapist, someone who works in finance, or really a high pressure position that's serving others. You're welcome to join me for my upcoming complimentary 1 hour workshop, How to Recover from Chronic Stress and Build Resilience. We'll meet live on Zoom on Saturday, November 12th at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Even if you can't make it live, be sure to register because the event will be recorded. And if you're registered, you'll have access to the recording. The link will be in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you there. Take care.